So I was listening to Thug the other day. I just went on like a couple of hours, just straight. It was like 2 hours, just straight Young Thug music, right? And Thug is like the poster boy for my thoughts on this, where it's like there's this thing. I was talking to my homeboy Christian about it the other day. There's this thing where like what I understand about music, especially now that I'm older, is that there are real generation gaps in music, and Wallow from Gillian Wallow, he talked about there being a such thing as a sound audience. His interview with Larry June, the Alchemist, and Two Chainz about their album that just came out, he was talking about there being a sound audience and how there are people that are looking specifically for a certain sound, and they're rocking with people because of the way some people's music makes them feel or what them reminds them of, and they're starving for somebody to have good, consistent music in that particular sound that they're looking for. Take Benny the Butcher, for example, right? Benny makes a particular brand of almost like Coke rap. You know what I mean? And like, regardless of whether or not you think that hurts the culture, there are people that grew up with that. So there's a real audience for it. And like, I think that's why Benny doesn't have very many kids listening to him, but that's why he's still successful, because there's a real audience for it. Like Larry June is people listening to like Dom Kennedy and West Coast lifestyle rap and just chill currency, and like there's a real audience for that. And I think that those guys have been doing it so long. Like, the internet and the blog era was still in its early stage. A lot of music was still trying to go based on the old era of radio star and push the people to the radio platforms, and if you get to interview, then that's how you're gonna know about you. It wasn't that many people using the internet, and just building Twitter and stuff like that was still new. So like, the people that you follow on Twitter were already famous. Like, getting famous because of a viral clip on Twitter was not yet a thing. So like, what we've allowed in the 2020s, especially because it was starting to take place at the end of the 2010s, mid 2010s to the end, it was starting to chug. But especially with TikTok, what we've allowed is people to find you based on your music just being used in other things. So like, you can build an entire fan base of your music on TikTok by making relatable TikToks and just having your music in the background. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where you can build a brand, and you can build it on Instagram, you can build it on Twitter, you can build it everywhere, where you can build a personal brand. People buy into the personal brand, and they're gonna mess with the music because of it. So when you have those kind of things, you can build whatever kind of audience you want. You just have to connect with the people. You have to connect with the people. So like, for example, Young Thug, right? Young Thug's fan base is younger, in the sense that I would argue a lot of Young Thug's fans are my age, not necessarily 30. Like, they're mid to early 20 somethings. Not really the young kids, I wouldn't think. Maybe nowadays some of them are coming over, but not the older generation either. And that's why Young Thug, for the longest time, until like So Much Fun came out, you kept seeing him drop projects, and it's like, bro, you are hot, but like, how are you only selling 40,000 units? And it's because all of his fans are getting his music off Dat Piff, my mixtapes, and like towards the middle to end part of it, of the 2010s, we're just streaming it. But it's not enough of us that are like buying albums, or it's not enough of us streaming to push him into 100,000 people. Because the truth of the matter is, even if you have the kids, there are only so many people in that demographic, and that demographic is so fickle with what they like to listen to, that it's like, you could connect with them and they may fuck with one album and not fuck with the next. It's hard to build a fan base and establish a sense of loyalty amongst teenagers because they're forever changing, their situations are forever changing, their friends are always changing. It's just hard to get teenagers that mess with you all the way through to the end. So I was talking about it in my Kendrick video. I don't know if I'm going to upload that one before this one or not. But like Odd Future, for example. Odd Future had a whole bunch of the kids and the teenagers that mess with them, but they didn't really have another audience outside of that. Now that they're all older, you see not only did their music mature so they can appeal to a wider range of people, but also those kids are the adults. So they have the adults, and then they have the new crop of kids that are listening to them and rocking with them too. So their fan base basically, like Tyler's fan base doubled. You know what I'm saying? That's why you see Young Thug's numbers rising too, because it's just one of those things where like the people like my age that have been a fan of him are still a fan of him because he was one of the first people that we feel like defined our era of music, especially down south and from the like Atlanta, Carolinas, Tennessee, all of that, like that area right there. We gravitate especially to the Atlanta scene, Memphis, Florida, things like that. Down south, we kind of stick right there. And so you have Thug, who was like him and Migos and Rich Homie Quan to a degree, but Rich Homie didn't stick around long enough really for it to have a sticking point. But Migos and Thug 1-2, however you want to split it up, during that era. And those are the sounds that we feel like defined Southern music for the entirety of 2013 to 2019. Like that 6, maybe if you want to extend it 7 to 2020 or go back a little bit to 2012, but really 2013 is 2019. That half decade of music, that era was when we were in late middle school through high school era. So like 7 school years. That's that entire generation from 12 until they graduate high school. So from middle school to high school, all of those kids are in my age bracket. And so like with our age bracket, that is what defined that sound for us. That's what we grew up on. If you wanted to play cool shit, you played it. But even amongst my peer group, Thug was kind of like he was a niche within that. Like a lot of the music stemmed from him. A lot of his peers in the industry took a lot from him. But I think the reason that it didn't even have wide appeal amongst the kids was just, it was, I especially like going back and listening to it now, I can recognize how musically unique Thug was. And that's the thing, if you're trying to be commercial, I don't know if musically unique gets you there. But if you're trying to stand the test of time, it definitely does. And I actually think that, especially in hindsight, like Thug's music is like proven to be timeless. Because go back and listen to Barter 6. Go back and listen to some of the best songs of, I don't necessarily know if they're great projects, but if you go back and listen to some of the best songs from the Slime Season 1 and 2, I think Slime Season 3 is legitimately a good project, but Slime Season 1 and 2, I'm a little iffy on them as projects, but their highs and the hits that were birthed from that are so great. But they still stand out. Like even in today's music industry, you can put those on and not really hear anybody that sounds like that. But I truly believe that if those songs came out today, they would still be hits, even amongst the new generation of kids. Like, and so that's the thing about it. Like, he put out such unique music that it was like, I don't know if it found its foothold with a wide enough audience immediately, like during that era or during that little run, but the longer he stays around and stays relevant in the music industry, the bigger his fan base has grown. And I do not think that's an accident. Like, I do not think that's an accident. I just think that as it finds more people, as a new group of kids comes up and is able to listen to, like, when he was putting out punk and all of those type things, our generation may look at that and say, okay, that's a little far off from what we grew up on with Thug. But even then, some of that music I still find pretty good. But even if it's a little far off from where we grew up from, we're still going to listen to him because he's Thug. And then now he's bringing in an entirely different generation of kids, because whether we like it or not, Thug's superpower has always been he makes the music that he wants to make, and it's going to find a good portion of people that fuck with it, no matter how weird it is. You know what I'm saying? And I think the weirdness comes from just being unorthodox. Like, it's unorthodox. You can't put it in a box. You can't, like, calling Thug trap is, and then listening to, like, what you would consider a generic trap artist, and then listening to Young Thug, you're like, well, if I like trap, I might like this guy, but I might not like Thug at all. You know what I mean? Like, you compare him to Atlanta artists, and you look at the Atlanta artists from that time, then you listen to Thug, and it's like, well, I mean, I can see how some of them kind of took some influence from his sound a little bit, but I could like all of them over him and not like him at all. Like, he was the kind of black sheep out of it. But I think that, again, out of that era of Atlanta artists, because like Gucci Mane came back and was making stuff, T.I. made some new music, Migos was making stuff, and everybody associated with QC. Near the end of Thug's time, that's when Lil Baby and Gunna came out. If you're asking me what has proven to be the most ageless music out of that entire era, go back and listen to Barter 6 and tell me that album could not come out today. Go listen to Power and tell me that song could not come out today and be a hit. Best Friend could not come out today and be a hit. But I'm not going to lie to y'all. I don't know if No Label 2 could come out today and be... No, that's a bad example, because I think that one actually could come out today and be a hit. I don't know if Young Rich Nation could come out today and be a hit. You know what I mean? Like, I went back and listened to some old Migos, and it's not that I don't like it. It just sounds very early 2010s. It sounds very early Migos. Like, I understand that was our wave back then because it was new back then, and it was, you know what I'm saying, the thing for us young people back then. But I listen to it now, and it's like, nah, I don't think most of that stuff is quite as... I don't think I could listen to it with 2025, 24-year-old ears. You know what I'm saying? Thug's music, that's not a problem at all. Slime Season 3, Jeffrey, I ran those whole tapes. It's not a problem at all. And that's the beauty of it, because it's just like, the only people I really say that about are like Future, Drake, Kendrick, Cole, those kind of guys. Like, even though back in the day I would have ranked Meek and Big Sean pretty high up there, I don't look at their music like that. Big Sean would like Dark Sky Paradise, yes. But some of his older stuff, like I said, it's not that I won't listen to it. It just like sounds like the era it was produced in. I think it's very rare that you get an artist that like was very unique in their era and inspired so much of like future sounds from that same area. But at the same time, it's just like nothing sounds like him. Nothing still sounds like him. And it still sounds like it could have been brand new this year and it would be great. Like, and it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, so what are you saying, Maya? I'm saying that I genuinely think that Thug's music is like some of the best from the 2010s. And I genuinely think that he may not have received the commercial success from it that quite matches the superstars, and maybe Young Thug will be forgotten to time. But for a guy like me, I look at the 2010s and especially that Atlanta era, and I say from a music standpoint, I think this is just some of the better music that we received from that era. And yes, I thought that at the time, but it was just like I was always just we were just me and Christian and my friends, some of them, we were just kind of in the minority of loving Thug and his music because like it was people love the hits, but they ain't necessarily love. You know what I'm saying? Some is like you go put on one of his albums and just sit there and listen to it. But I do. I think it's every bit like the Travis Scotts and those guys that have like their superstars because of it. And it's always like that, whether it's music, sports, all of that. There's always somebody that did something great in their era that just gets overlooked and not talked about. And yeah, and I think Thug possibly could be one of those guys because I think his music is timeless. I really enjoyed going back and listening to some of his old stuff, and I would encourage everybody else that is a Thug fan, or if you're not a Thug fan, just go give some of those tapes a listen and tell me what you think. But yeah, that's pretty much all I had to say. Thank y'all for watching. Peace.